Hello, I'm Rabyd, otherwise known as the Rabyd Atheist, a former pastor turned atheist, now a compassionate anti-theist. Welcome to my channel. Feel free to like or dislike the video as you see fit, so feel free to hit those buttons. And I would appreciate it if you would comment below and hit just that subscribe button and hit your notification bell for more content as it is released. You're also free to share my videos as much as you like. The purpose of this channel is educational, and particularly in relationship to atheism, deconversion, and Bible and theology in relationship to those issues. And also on occasion, I will delve into the realm of religion and politics and how they intersect, particularly in America, where it seems to be quite a prevalent problem. Today is another Friday video where I'll be addressing comments. Forgive me if I sound a little hoarse. I don't think I'm having a cold. I don't feel bad, and that usually means that there's some sort of seasonal allergy parasite in the air that's giving me crap. First comment I have is a rather lengthy one from a guy called Big Country, where he goes into length about several things, but in the end he kind of talks about how basically God did not come to save everyone, but to save his people. And I'm going to take on this opening statement because I think there's one part of it that's patently false if you consider the Bible. It says, did Jesus return in 70 AD? The Bible's not about you. Christ came not to save the world, but his people. Okay. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believe in him shall not perish, but have everlasting life. For God did not send his Son into the world to condemn the world, but through him the world might be saved. Do you read your Bible? Okay, because you quote a lot of Bible verses later, and it seems you have forgotten something pretty important there, that John 3:16, 17, 18, 19, 20, and 21 kind of contradict what you just said. The Bible is pretty clear that Jesus came in attempting to save the entire world. And that whoever becomes, this is a very Calvinist position that you have, and that's why I'm going to tell you right now, I think the Calvinist position is kind of frickin' evil, because you have God making arbitrary and capricious decisions at the beginning of the universe, and who lives and who dies eternally. Well, why the hell go through the pantomime of the whole earth and whatever? It just doesn't make any sense. Now, so the idea you're presenting here is that, he only came to save his people, maybe just the Jews. Okay, well, fine. A couple of things. Number one, I used to be a theologian. And so when I look at theology like this, I kind of go, well, okay, whatever, because I can see it in a bunch of different ways. And that kind of proves to me that the Bible is not the Word of God, because if it was the Word of God, we would only be able to see God's opinion on it, but we don't. We see a multitude of different opinions. But your annihilationist position, I'm going to agree with. I spent a long time, because when I talk about hell, when I talked about hell in my one video, it was the doctrine that I was required to believe to be an Assembly of God minister. I rejected that view when I became a congregational minister, and I held a position where I said, there needs to be a temporary place of punishment where justice is served. And there needs to be another place where the righteous get to enjoy the first fruits, if the texts are to be believed. So what you have then is this idea of, okay, we have this situation where we see where God is going to punish the wicked and he's going to reward the righteous. So we have to have that in this mix of what happens in the afterlife if we take the Bible literally. But we also have this at the end. One of the things that kind of caught my attention was that death and hell are cast into the lake of fire in the book of Revelation. So my theology at the time was, well, that would end what Jesus was describing in the story of Lazarus and the rich man, which is, Abraham's bosom and a place called the place of the dead, Sheol. And all of that gets cast in the lake of fire. And to me, the lake of fire was annihilation, because it doesn't, the more I looked at it, the more I'm like, it's kind of a final, everything's over. Okay. There's no talk about people sitting around the fires of hell poking their fingers into it and saying, if you listen to us, you'd be here in heaven with us. So I agree that, I became what would be called a temporal, punishment reward, and then later on a final annihilist. So I agree with the nihilist position at the end if you take the Bible literally and you try to reconcile everything in it. But once again, we're hashing theology, which in my opinion now as an atheist is just an exercise in trying to explain away inconsistencies that can't be explained away. And most of the end of it is, it's a mystery and we just need to take it on faith. And as anybody who's watched this channel knows, taking something on faith is a very dishonest position to me, because you're basically saying I believe in something that I can't prove. So there's that aspect. Now, as an atheist, quoting scripture to me to try to prove a point, I don't believe the Bible is the word of God. I don't believe it has any authority over anybody. So to prove your point, you'd have to start with a position that says, I don't have any knowledge. You had to prove the existence of God to me in the first place. And then you have to prove that somehow he gives a shit about what happens on a little blue orb in the middle of nowhere in some nowhere galaxy in a universe populated by billions and billions of galaxies. And somehow he's only concerned with a small group of primates here on planet Earth. And that he is an intimate association, particularly with what they do naked, as Sam Harris would say. And you know what? I think that's complete and utter bullshit. It's narcissistic to the nth degree. I'm going to make the claim here. I think most religion leads a person to narcissism, because you sit there and you think somehow, I'm a king's kid and God only cares about me and God only cares about his elect people. And I'm aiming that one at you, big country. That really in the end, all these other people are irrelevant because they're just going to be annihilated anyway. The only people that matter are his chosen ones that were chosen at the beginning of time, and they have to go through all this to prove some stupid, vague point that God has. And in the end, we're going to be part of those chosen people. What kind of narcissistic shit is that? I'm sorry, it's just really bad. It's like somehow you think you've graduated to one of God's holy ones. How do you know that? Well, if you're a true Calvinist, you would say, no, I could be one of the ones annihilated. I just happen to know the truth. Yeah, well, not buying it. Moving on. Sweaters in Harmony. Thoroughly enjoyed this video. She's talking about my Bible contradictions, number 1. Can't wait for the next one in the series. Actually, I think there's 3 of them now. So Sweaters in Harmony, if you want to go to my playlist, you can find those. The whole my God versus the biblical God appears to be nothing more than an old confirmation bias at work. Exactly. Okay, even with my comment with Big Country, he's got confirmation bias going hardcore on a nihilist view and pretty heavy Calvinism with the idea that he only came for his people. So, he's going to look at the Bible through that lens, and that's what he's going to see. He's going to see those two things all the time, no matter what other passages might do to contradict it. Human beings like to form narratives that align with their own internalized values because it helps the mind make sense of the world. And then when everything aligns, let's just face this, it's pretty much damn good. Yeah, I agree. I mean, when we have those moments when everything seems to be very clear and everything works out really well, it is really damn good, isn't it? I agree with you. It's just, it feels good. But when we really looked at it, but when we look at it, it really is just us confirming our confirmation bias that distorts the truth of what's actually there. We no longer see what is right in front of our eyes, but our narrative tells us what to see exactly. This is why the my God versus the biblical God is very important. Because my viewpoint on God as a Christian and a theologian changed over and over and over all the time, because I kept running into my studies of what the actual Bible said, about God, and what I was told to believe and think about God. And when they conflicted, I would change my view one way or the other, or I would come up with some other convoluted way to look at the Bible so that my previous assumptions about God would work. And when you live that way, you're constantly in the state of confirmation bias and, just trying to rework things to make it work. The fact that this is called theology. Theology is the process of making irreconcilable, incoherent things reconcilable and coherent when it comes to God. And the truth of the matter is, my degrees in biblical studies and my degree in theological studies did more to drive me to being an atheist than anything else. Because the more I realized that things weren't reconcilable with God and that the Bible was a very flawed and very human book, the more I began to realize that I couldn't hold the position of being a Christian for much longer, and eventually it did break. Time and physical distance from the source of our indoctrination is the only true cure for this phenomenon. I would agree with that. I have been out of the ministry now for over 2 years. I have been away from church. I have not darkened the door of a church since May 27, 2018, which was the last time I preached, and it was the day I walked out of my church for the very last time. Now, I think I did go back Monday to pick up some stuff before I turned in my keys, but when I look back at it, I haven't been in that environment. I haven't hung around Christians. My Bible is sat on my shelf dusty for 2 years. And it's amazing how once you get away from all that, how the world becomes a little bit clearer what it really, really is. And the more I began to realize that, that confirmation bias was real to me when it came to my faith, the more I realized that now that I'm out of it and I'm not constantly pounding it into my head anymore, I suddenly realized there's a real nice, wonderful reality to the real world. And so many people miss it because they got to have this faith in imaginary characters to give their life meaning. So Sweaters in Harmony, a very good quote, very good comment. I appreciated that one. It gave me time to rehash something. Last week's 38 video checking in greater purpose. Good to see you. Life can be hard for different reasons. Freebird to reason. I really hope everything works out for you. Find purpose towards forward in things and the things that I am doing. Life has a tendency to bring black clouds at times. When it happens, it feels permanent, but then the sun does come back. Exercise is good for your depression. If you can't get to the gym, rowing machines are all work. Reasonably expensive. I feel, my friend, take your time and don't get pressured by Jude because it's always great to see your videos. The thing is about doing these videos is it helps with the depression. It gives me something to do and get me forward. When I describe people in my depression doesn't debilitate me. It doesn't really affect my work per se. Like I can go to work and nobody will know that I'm depressed. Unless they're really empathic themselves and can sense emotions really well. What happens is it really has a negative downturn on my personal relationships and my own opinion of myself and where I'm going. It has more of an effect on that when I'm in my downtime or with people that I love and care about. So that's kind of the nature of my depression. So it doesn't do things that really good. But part of overcoming that is having these different disciplines like exercise. I stretch out in the morning. I do a quick meditation on various virtues that I hold dear. When I'm doing all that, I eat breakfast, shower, do all that stuff, exercise, walking on my days off, doing different things has helped me maintain and have a good depression managed. And I've gotten away from that and I really need to get back to it, getting my nutrition right. I do actually have access to a gym here because the ones in Michigan, at least up north where I work, are open. And mostly I think that's because those gyms aren't as attended as many others. So, and with my job changing in a couple weeks, I'm not sure how I'm going to fall there, but I think I'll either way, I'm going to have a better time to go to the gym. So, but it's just one of those things. Tall Tale of Jesus 4.12, Freebird of Reason again, very thought-provoking. It is awful to be ordered to love God more than family when our feelings are from God, and we are in cruel abuse to give us a love and tell us to abandon it. As for calming the sea, that's easy work. If you can flood the whole of drowning poor elderly ladies and elders, you men. someone's mother and father, babies that are probably still being born in the waters take over. I guess killing people is easy when you're a god, a religion of blood and sacrifice and death. So glad I'm out of that delusion. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. So I'm kind of with the Life of Christ, the Tall Tale of Jesus series. I'm kind of looking at just the life of Christ without the connections to the rest of the Bible. But you make a very interesting connection. Why is it that God, who has no problem killing, like in the story, killing all of mankind? It's one of the things I point out with the flood story, that God isn't very pro-life. I mean, he kills mothers who are pregnant. I mean, there were babies, there were toddlers, there were young children that got slaughtered in that flood too, which is what really makes the whole story unbelievable, is this thought that, oh, they were thinking about evil all the time. You try to think about anything all the time. Good luck. I just don't see it being a reasonable, rational possibility. So thanks for that comment. EC. This is from my Rabyd Ramblings of the U.S. Supreme Court, Amy Coney Barrett, and the religious, political tribalism. I resonate with the part where you said that some people are replacing God with politics. I always voted based on what my beliefs are with my best interests. I voted with Kerry, Obama twice, Clinton. Now I'm voting for Trump, and I faced a lot of backlash from my family and friends. When I try to explain how his policy has benefited me, and that he hasn't been as bad as the media says, I've literally called mentally ill. No politician will save us, and none of them are the greatest role models or perfect. So, well, why not get something beneficial out of your vote? If your life sucks now, changing the president won't make life drastically different. I'm voting for the person who will make my life better for me and my family. That's just as much vitriol, tribalism, and politics these days as there is in religion. I'm going to tell you something, EC. I am seriously considering doing a series of messages on how politics and religion are very, very similar, like very twin. They're like, in my opinion, they're like twins, one who parts their hair to the right and the other one parts their hair to the left. But pretty much they're the same in their personality and the way they do things. But the issue with me and U.S. politics is this. On the one hand, as an atheist, I dislike the right trying to get into my bedroom, trying to say that my morality should be a certain way, trying to dictate what the morality in this country should be. I despise that both as an atheist and as a libertarian. On the left, I despise the fact that they don't trust citizens enough to say, have their own firearms, have their own businesses, without screwing people over and, enjoying their life. They seem to want to impose their own values on everybody as well. And I think it's this imposition, this imposing of creed and values, regardless of whether it's religion or political party, it seems to have a very similar effect. There's absolute devotion to a leader. You make a valid point about Trump. I don't like Trump for a lot of reasons. I don't like Biden for a lot of reasons. But I think both of them are portrayed far worse than they really are by their opponents, and they're portrayed far better by their supporters than they really are. So what happens is you have this confirmation bias thing that we're talking about, where if a Trump supporter sees something good about Trump, yeah, that's true. And when they see something bad about, that's bullshit. And it's the same is true for Biden on the other side. So you don't really get an honest assessment of the candidates. People ask me who I'm going to vote for, and I'm not ashamed of it. I'm going to vote for George Jorgensen, the Libertarian Party candidate. The reason? Because her ethics and virtues line up closest. Of the three candidates that can win the Electoral College, she is one of them. She doesn't get the airplay. She doesn't get the media time because the two-party system has been very effective in maintaining the two-party system. I'll just leave it at that. But she, when I look at what she believes and how she would act, I feel she best represents what I would do if I was in her position. And so I'm going to vote for that. And that's the way you should vote. You shouldn't be voting on this tribalistic bullshit. I think you make an excellent point in that you should be looking at it, okay, and there's no harm in this. in voting for somebody that is going to benefit you down the road. There's no harm in that. Okay. It makes perfect sense, to be quite honest. Okay. We're all selfish, and there's nothing wrong with that. I read a book a while ago. I'm thinking of rereading it, called The Virtue of Selfishness by Ayn Rand. And I like Ayn Rand for a lot of things. She's an atheist. She's a libertarian. She's very anti-government in a lot of ways. Anybody who's read like Fountainhead or Atlas Shrugged knows that her viewpoint is, great people have made life great. They should be rewarded for it, not punished for it. And I think that's a well-meaning theme in her things. And everybody's selfish. But she writes this other book called The Virtue of Selfishness. And she says a person acting in their self-interest is least helping everybody in that they are not burdening everybody else with their problems. And she makes a valid point there. There's nothing wrong with being selfish. It's how we've survived. It's how we've lived so long. It is probably also one of the causes that religion exists, because we have this selfish notion, this hubris that thinks, we can live forever. Well, this person in our life dies that we've held very dear. We'll see them again on the other side. And it's stuff like that that becomes the beginnings of religion. This belief, this false lie that we tell ourselves that we're going to see people on the other side and, they're in a better place or whatever. It's amazing how we preach all of our relatives into heaven, isn't it? Now, I've known some people that say, you're better off in hell. It's more fun. But I've also seen, people preach their loved ones in heaven. I'm like, man, I remember doing a funeral for a guy, and these people wanted, I'll see him again in heaven. I know he's there in a better place. And then I would hear stories from his friends about how he was, he was with his wife, he was banging 2 other women, he was drunk all the time, and he didn't have a kind thing to say about God. How the hell is this guy in heaven? But somehow he got preached into heaven. Okay, so I don't know. I don't get it either. Okay, I'm with you, EC. Vote how you feel will benefit yourself. If you feel Trump is that, great. If you think Biden's that, great. If you think Joe Jorgensen's that, great. If it's the myriad of other third-party candidates that don't get any traction because the media won't cover their candidates, vote for them. Great. Because I'm going to tell you straight, from a person with even a smattering of knowledge of politics and economics, your individual vote is near worthless. It takes you banding together with a whole bunch of other people to make your vote even count. And so, it's kind of one of those things where you have to say, I got to vote for my best interest. And there's nothing wrong with that. Okay, there's nothing wrong with it at all. That's the whole point, live long and prosper. Freebird of Reason. I know Freebird here is from the UK. Okay, so when I do stuff about American politics, he kind of has some interesting comments. He says, good for reason. I listened to this video and re-looked at some of my positions on certain issues. In the UK, Mr. Trump is portrayed as a nutcase, but I'm sure it is not true. It's like the religion in the news, and the newspapers are preachers. And when you really know the truth, it is all very different. I see the news twisting truth just like people twist religious texts to suit their faithfulness to a particular church. It's so easy to remain faithful for the wrong reasons. Exactly. I'm very lost in American political issues, but an interesting chat. I have a political science degree, Freebird, and I live in this country, and I'm still lost in American politics. But I can tell you one thing. American politics, religion is at the core of it, because this is still a very believe in God society. Okay, so a lot of people are trying to get the will of God in this country. Of course, as an atheist, I oppose this. But on the other hand, I look at the left, and the left is also trying to impose a controlled speech, a controlled press, a censored press, if you ask me, and a real lack of freedom to assemble or have grievances with the government, which is also against our Constitution. So when I look at the left and right, I'm like, yeah, they're both trying to steal my rights for different reasons. And so I fight against that. But American politics is very different, I think, in the fact that we only have 2 parties. In the UK, I think you have a lot of them. And you know what? I really wish we had that here. I really have always felt it was odd that we have 330 million people and we only have two parties to represent us. That seems kind of bullshit to me, but it's that first past the post voting, so everybody's trying to get that 51% so they never lose an election. So you band together with other groups that you may not necessarily agree with, and then you hope that your side wins, and then you get enough scraps thrown your way from that side. But it really is kind of crappy. That's why I think there's 3 states in the union right now that are experimenting with ranked choice voting, which allows third-party candidates and what it basically says is, okay, you're a Trump supporter. You're going to put number 1. I would have Trump. But I ain't going to vote for Biden if I'm a Trump supporter. I'm going to put him down 5th. And then I pick Joe Jorgensen 2nd, and then 3rd and 4th other candidates. And then you rank those choices. Okay. It's very possible, let's say every Biden supporter voted for George Jorgensen in the second vote, and every Trump supporter voted for, well, George Jorgensen, because she's second all the time, is going to get more ranked choice vote points than anybody else. And she might end up winning that state because either side is still happy with her as second choice. It kind of allows you to rank how happy you are with each candidate choice. And that adds a little bit more flexibility to it. I think if it ends up in all 50 states, you might see more political parties in the United States, which is a good first step into breaking up this duopoly that keeps giving us bullshit candidates like Trump and Biden. That's my opinion. So, but to get back to the religion and politics, how they're alike, you do make a very valid point. And it's a point I'm trying to make here. If you have a leader who you're devoted to, and no matter what anybody says to it about them, you dismiss anything negative and you only accept praise, that's cultic. If your message is always a certain way, no matter what the facts are, that's cultic. When you look at how the news media does preach their spin and preach their message, and any deviation from that message is treated like heresy, that's cultic. Okay, and that's what I see the political parties, both sides, do. If you come out when I was in a Republican, the biggest problem that I had is whenever I talk about the drug war, and I would talk about the police and the need for changing qualified immunity because it was dangerous because it's against the Constitution, they would have a fit. Oh, drug dealers are bad, and people that do drugs are bad, and they couldn't even conceive of them as victims of themselves. And you could look at qualified immunity for police officers, and it's like, no, they should carry insurance like every other, like nurses, doctors, and everybody else. If you screw up, then your insurance rates are going to go up. That changes the way you police, okay? You still have to do your job. So it's like, but you're going to do it with a lot more care, and you're not going to be escalating a situation if you have to carry the insurance yourself. So it's like, it's one of those things where, as I looked at different issues, I can't get anywhere because the moment you say something against the dogma of whatever party you're from, or you get shouted down, that's heresy. That, it's the very same mentality that religions will talk about other religions and call, or sects within their religion and call it heresy. And so it really creates a very venomous atmosphere. We basically in this country have the Democrat religion and the Republican religion fighting with each other all the time. Now, I'm not saying the Libertarian Party doesn't have its own little bits of faith. I think our faith in freedom and liberty is well justified, but faith and liberty have to be upheld. They have to be fought for, which means they're not so much faith dogmas as something that we achieve. So maybe that is a big difference, but I don't know. It's strange to me. It's why I really think I want to think about this more. I think a series on how politics mimics religion might be an interesting series to delve into and a question to ask. So that's good thought for the future. Well, I've come to the end of it, so hopefully someday I can convince you to be a rabid atheist like myself. In the meantime, this is Ed Rabyd, the man, also known as the Rabid Atheist, signing off and wishing you a good day.